bless America.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains to the prairies to the ocean, white with fog. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
I'm Bonnie Silvera, and on behalf of the Benicia Historical Society, I would like to welcome you to today's Memorial Day ceremony. At this time, I would like to acknowledge the elected officials that are here today. We have Supervisor Linda Seifert, Mayor Elizabeth Patterson, Vice Mayor Alan Schwartzman, and Council members Tom Campbell and Mark Hughes. And then we have Kathy Hoffman from Congressman George Miller's office. Thank you all for coming today. On this day, we honor the memory of those veterans who gave their lives in defense of the United States Constitution and the freedoms we enjoy every day. We show our gratitude to all those men and women who serve now or who have served our country in every branch of the military.
Hold it. Hold it. Hold it. Hold it.
Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Memorial Day 2011. This Memorial Day is different for Benicians than it has been in the past. The 749th Combat Sustainment Support Battalion, headquartered here in Benicia, is currently deployed to a war zone in Iraq for the first time in its 63-year history. They are the first support battalion from the California National Guard to deploy to Iraq for Operation New Dawn. Today we want to extend a special thank you and a special prayer for the families and the men and women of the 749th. May they all be kept out of harm's way and reunited with their families soon. Our troops, both living and dead, have their faith and beliefs rooted in the many religions of the world. Some statistics show that there are 19 major religions, but in reality, there are literally thousands. Over the years, the military, like society in general, has become much more religiously diverse. The military has put forth a great deal of effort to facilitate the religious needs of all service members and to respect the rights of non-believers. What is the best way to include prayers for each and every faith that our troops believe in? I think the best way is for each one of us to offer our prayers and gratitudes in our own faith and beliefs for everything our troops have sacrificed for each one of us and our country. We will now have a minute of silence during which everyone can offer their prayers and gratitudes in their own way. Let us bow our heads in prayer.
As president of the Benicia Historical Society, it is my honor to give you a brief history of the cemetery. The Benicia Army Cemetery is the oldest U.S. military post cemetery in the Pacific States. It was a post cemetery for the Benicia Barracks, which from 1849 to 1857 served as a headquarters for the U.S. Army's Pacific Division. For much of that period, Benicia Barracks contained the only Army hospital on the West Coast. The cemetery contains 211 interments, dating from 1849 to 1958. Those include 123 U.S. military personnel, 9 foreign military personnel who were German and Italian prisoners of war, 61 civilians, 18 of unknown affiliation, and 3 pets. Members of the Ordnance Department, Quartermaster Corps, Signal Corps, Corps of Engineers, Infantry, Artillery, Cavalry, and Marine Corps are buried here. The cemetery also contains the remains of women and children who were dependents of soldiers stationed at Benicia. John Foley, who was awarded a Congressional Medal of Honor, is among the unknown. In the past, headstones were simple wood markers and information about the deceased was painted on. Over time, this information was lost, and when the disinterred were reinterred here, the graves were marked as unknown. The earliest dated burial at this cemetery was First Lieutenant Charles E. Jarvis, who died June 8, 1849 at Sonoma, California. Emily G. Brammer, wife of Staff Sergeant Charles Brammer, died June 12, 1958, and was the last person buried in the cemetery. The Benicia Army Post Cemetery is listed on the National Register of Historic Places as part of the Benicia Arsenal / Benicia Barracks Historic District. The Benicia Historical Society sponsors its annual Memorial Day ceremony in order to remember and honor those who are buried here, as well as all men and women of the armed forces. The Benicia Historical Society would like to extend our thanks to our neighbors, Valero Refinery, Ports Incorporated, and to the City of Benicia Public Works Department, and to especially the groundskeepers, Catherine and James Vanier, for all their valiant efforts to protect and preserve this special place of remembrance and reflection. We have Harry Wassman to thank for beginning the tradition of these Memorial Day ceremonies here at the Arsenal Cemetery more than 25 years ago. Thank you, Harry, for establishing the tradition that we continue and for setting the standard of excellence that we strive to meet every year. Harry makes the past more pleasant for all of us.
Beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains' majesty, above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for pilgrimage, whose turning passions dress, a thoroughfare for freedom across the wilderness. America, America, God lend thine every thought, confirm thy soul in self-control, by liberty in law.
Mayor Patterson, Supervisor Seifert, General Miller, City Council members, honored guests, and fellow citizens of Benicia. It's an honor and a pleasure to be back with you again in this place of rest, this gem of a military cemetery. I spoke with you last year, and what a year it's been. Earthquakes, tsunamis, threat of nuclear radiation, giant floods, a year of military casualties, but also a year in which we achieved both vengeance and justice by eliminating bin Laden, the principal sworn enemy of our republic. It was a year in which BP finally capped a spill that had discharged more than 4 million barrels of crude oil into the Gulf of Mexico. It's been a year of sexual stupidity, death in the streets, international public betrayal, rebellions, darkness at midday, agony, and miscarriage. Since we last talked, a petty official in Tunisia slapped a street vendor. The vendor sought justice, but found only ridicule. In despair, he set himself on fire. Sparks from his martyred body swept through neighboring lands, scorching the conscience of the world. The governments of Tunisia and Egypt were toppled, and as I speak, the North African littoral is blazing. Revolutionary flames have jumped borders, menacing all who abuse power. Rebellion is boiling in the streets of Morocco, Yemen, Bahrain, and Syria. The entire balance of power in the Mideast is changing. In contrast to the situation in the world, and in much of these, our beloved United States, we in Benicia are very, very fortunate. We have comfortable weather, a decent standard of living, and only a tolerable amount of political sniping. The soldiers who sleep beneath these stones, American, German, Italian, are untouched by the turmoil of outrageous weather, threats of nuclear radiation, deceit, betrayal, and further military adventures. They've paid their dues and earned their rest. Your presence here today honors them and their sons and daughters in military service. At this time, I'd like to read 2 poems by a splendid modern Greek poet, Constantine Cavafy. These short poems sum up how I feel when I visit this peaceful spot. After those 2 poems, with your indulgence, I'll read one of my own short poems. First, Nicholas Cavafy. Ideal and beloved voices of those who are dead, or of those who are lost to us like the dead. Sometimes they speak to us in our dreams. Sometimes in thought, the mind hears them, and for a moment, with their echo, other echoes return from the first poetry of our lives, like music that extinguishes the far-off night. The second poem by Cavafy is called Longings. Like the beautiful bodies of the dead who never aged, shut away inside a splendid tomb by tearful mourners, with roses at their head and jasmine at their feet. That's what longing looks like when they've passed away without being fulfilled, before they could be made complete by one of pleasure's nights or one of its radiant mornings. And now, a poem of mine. This poem is called Art Lesson. Parts of the picture are plain to me. The sky, the sun, a house, a tree. The artist's name is David, with a backward D. Yes, David, grade 3. Look, the sky is blue, Crayola blue, with an orange sun that casts no shadows. Shadows don't come until high school. A plane hangs in the Crayola sky, surrounded by puffs of flak. See bombs falling from the plane, exploding on the ground in plumes of Crayola black. At the side of the house, see the bodies on the lawn, 2 women and a child. The lawn is Crayola green and crimson. Thank you.
Good morning. It's my honor to be here today, to be a part of Benicia's community and see the other communities around our nation come together to embrace, support, and give tribute to our heroes, past and present, those dedicated soldiers, sailors, Marines, Coasties, Air Force, airmen, that gave of their lives in the service to our great country and to promote democracy around the world. I'm going to ask, what is the difference between Memorial Day and Veterans Day? I know many here know that already, but the disturbing fact is there's a lot of people that don't know what the difference is between those two recognitions. And then I just read in yesterday's paper in the parade, there was a question, what war does Memorial Day recognize? Well, the simple difference between Memorial Day and Veterans Day is that Memorial Day has been set aside to honor Americans who died in wartime, all wars, while Veterans Day, of course, is intended to honor all that have served in the armed forces. Since 1866, when the people of Waterloo, New York, dipped their flags to half-mast and decorated their village to remember the soldiers who died from our Civil War, our nation has paid tribute to those lives of all servicemen and women who have fallen in the line of duty. But it wasn't until 1971 that it became a national holiday. So on at least one day of each year, the nation stops, takes a pause, and remembers them to take note of their sacrifice. Memorial Day is a day to give pause and to give thanks to the people who fought for the things we Americans hold dear. As stated in our Declaration of Independence, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creators with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is what our heroes died for. This is what we Americans that we cherish. During the past week, thousands of people, ordinary citizens like you and me, and I know some of you in this audience and across our nation, have decorated each of its military graves with the nation's flag. They planted the flag at the base of the gravestone in order to lift up the lives of these heroes. The graves here at the Benicia Army Arsenal Cemetery and at the Arlington National Cemetery and countless cemeteries worldwide remind us that freedom is not free. It comes with a great cost. The service members resting here and elsewhere lived supporting the lives and values that create the backbone of our nation. These service men and women share a special heritage, a common bond with today's warrior. If you were to look in their lives, whether they're privates or generals, you would see they all practice the military values of loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. They were fathers and mothers, sons and daughters, husbands and wives who rose to meet seemingly impossible odds and did extraordinary things. These brave men and women left the safety of their sovereign nation, their sovereign soil, to defeat tyrants, ensure justice, and fulfill the promise of safety and security for our citizens and the global community. Their lives were dedicated not to conflict or death. Their lives were dedicated to compassion and life. We have all been touched by the ultimate sacrifice warriors have made in service to their country and the suffering it has brought to mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, spouses, and friends. We remember the families of the missing and the Gold Star families who lost the warriors to illness, injury, and combat. These families who stood strong through uncertainty and whose resilience, dedication, and commitment to their soldiers continue to shine as beacons through the darkest hours for the rest of us. For the families and friends of the fallen, every day is Memorial Day. In remembering the missing, and I'm so glad to see the POW MIA flag, our nation is committed to the warrior ethos, I will never leave a fallen comrade behind, and continues its efforts to locate, identify, and send home those men and women who have not returned. A case in point is a recent interment on this past 22nd of May of Sergeant Marvin Gill, who was laid to rest in the family plot in Linden, California. Sergeant Gill was a 26-year-old radio operator assigned to a C-47 under the U.S. Army Air Force, and it was lost during mission in World War II. He was missing for 44 years. You think about that family that didn't know for so long. But he was found in the Philippines in 1989. Again, we will never leave a fallen comrade behind. In this world, terror will not rest. Violence will not sleep. Unfortunately, evil will not die. But by your presence here, as we honor and remember those who have served, compassion will prevail, justice will triumph, and freedom will reign. Since September 11, 2001, the Army has lost over 6,000 soldiers in the war on terror. I don't know the count for the other services, but within the Army numbers, 652 have been Army National Guardsmen. I ask you to remember those who stand shoulder to shoulder today against terror and oppression, carrying freedom's torch in foreign lands and here at home. I'm pulling out my BlackBerry because I have an email that I want to share with you. As the chaplain has stated, our very own 749th Combat Sustainment Battalion, headquartered here in Benicia, they are at contingency base, operating base in Adder, Iraq. And via email, I have spoken to their commander, Lieutenant Colonel David Sinetti. He indicates in his email to me that their unit is the command and control headquarters for more than 1,000 soldiers, sailors, and civilians. This unit is solely responsible for all the supply, maintenance, distribution, and transportation support for all of southern Iraq. The soldiers and civilians in this unit are exposed to many risks from the enemy, to include indirect fire and improvised explosive devices. He states, despite Despite the risk, these men and women have not faltered in their duty and have shown great professionalism and dedication to the mission. This unit is the premier logistical formation in southern Iraq, proudly serving and representing the Army, the nation, the great state of California, and the citizens of Benicia and the other cities where the soldiers are from. He says that the morale is good and that the soldiers of the 749th are doing us proud. In our nation's history, our wars had been fought overseas, but now it seems that they are abroad and at home. And I just wanted to give you a reminder that we have 2,500 soldiers and airmen on our border today between the United States and Mexico. So I ask you to remember the fallen, those currently serving, absolutely support their families, and never forget the missing, and rejoice in their lives. In the words of Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, they are dead, but they live in each patriot's breast, and their names are engraved on honor's bright crest. Thank you. God bless America.
The oath of enlistment is taken by all those who enlist in the United States Armed Forces. It is a solemn oath that reaches into the very depth and soul of each individual who takes it. It is true that we members of the armed forces give up some of our rights when we join the armed forces, but it is for the higher good of our country and for all Americans. We hold military personnel responsible for their word. We punish via the Uniform Code of Military Justice or other legal administrative methods those who break the oath. I, Larry J. Miller, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the orders of the officers appointed over me, according to the regulations and the Uniform Code of Military Justice, so help me God.